Hi everyone. It's time for the chemistry part of our review, right? Let's look at our study guide and see what we need to know. It looks like you guys need to know how to label an atom. That's a basic thing, so let's go over that. The outside of an atom is taken up by electrons, and they exist in electron shells. Now these electron shells go around the center of the atom, and we call that center of the atom a nucleus. The nucleus itself is made up of positive protons and neutral neutrons. Now the electron shells, they exist in order: first shell, and then a second shell, and then a third shell. Now, besides knowing how to label an atom and what an atom looks like, you guys need to know the periodic table. Now, I'm going to give you a periodic table on your final exam. It'll be the last page. But you need to know how to read it, right? Especially since I'm giving you one. So, first things first, we need to know what our metals and non-metals are. Our metals is everything in green. All this on the left side, everything in green here, that's a metal. Everything in this purplish blue on this side, that would be a non-metal. So here we have non-metals, and here we have the metals. Now, if we want to organize the periodic table further, which we do, we're going to need to look at groups and periods. Groups go up to down, up to down, up to down. Here's group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5, group 6, group 7, and group 8. Our 8 groups. Groups go up and down. Periods are like a row. They go left to right. Row 1, row 2, or period 2, period 3, or row 3, period 4, or row 4. That's all those things are. Now, they tell us a lot about an atom. A group number is equal to the number of electrons on the outside shell. Those are our valence electrons. So, for example, in group 1, we're going to have 1 electron on the outside shell, 1 valence electron. In group 3, we're going to have 3 electrons on the outside shell, or 3 valence electrons. In group 8, the noble gases, we're going to have 8 electrons on the outside shell, except for helium. Helium has 2 because it only has the first shell. Speaking of shells, let's think about what periods do for us. Periods tell us how many shells each atom has. So, for example, if you're in period 1 or row 1, you have 1 shell. If you are in period 2, you have 2 shells. If you are in period 3, you have 3 shells. So, for example, sulfur. Sulfur here has 3 shells, and its outside shell has 6 electrons because it's in group 6. So knowing rows and periods will help you out a lot when you need to draw these atoms. All right, looking a little closer at the periodic table, we need to know how to read this square here. The Na is a symbol for the name. The number on top, the 11, is the atomic number. It tells us the number of protons. And if the atom is neutral, it tells us the number of electrons. Now the number on the bottom is called the atomic mass, or the mass number. This is equal to protons. Here, let me write it down here on the bottom for you. It's equal to protons plus neutrons. That's equal to your mass number. So if I have a mass number, I'm able to figure out how many neutrons we have. For example, here we have about 23 as our mass number. If I wanted to know how many neutrons we have, I would need to subtract the number of protons, and that would give me the neutrons. Now, in this case, we know how many protons we have because that's our atomic number up here. So it would be 23 minus 11, and that would give us the number of neutrons, which in this case is 12. All right. Other important things we need to know. We need to know isotopes. Isotopes are atoms that have different number of neutrons. Now the atoms themselves are the same. The only thing we're changing is the number of neutrons. And by changing the neutrons, that changes how much they weigh. The atoms still react the same for the most part, but it's going to change how much they weigh because we're adding more things to the center. We're adding more neutrons. Now the other thing you guys need to know is you guys need to know how to draw Lewis dot diagrams. That's not on the study guide. It's helpful for being able to draw ionic bonds. So a Lewis dot diagram, we draw the symbol and then we draw the valence electrons on the outside. And now that we're talking about bonds, let's talk about bonds for real. We got two bonds that you guys need to know, an ionic bond and a covalent bond. An ionic bond is between a metal and a non-metal. In this kind of bond, we always have an electron that's moving. So metal atoms lose an electron and non-metal atoms accept an electron. Remember, we're trying to get a full shell. That's why atoms react, get a full shell. And by giving away electrons, we can achieve both sides having full shells. So in these cases, when metals lose an electron, they become positive, and when non-metals accept an electron, they become negative. And this positive and negative charge is going to hold them together really tightly, and that's what that bond is. That's the ionic bond. It's a bond between these opposing charges. Besides ionic bonds, we have covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are bonds where electrons are shared between two non-metal atoms. That means covalent bonds happen always between non-metal atoms. And as opposed to giving something away here, a non-metal bond here, we are sharing the electron. Both sides are holding on to it. Alright, and we have a couple of different ways of showing this. Usually when we show covalent bonds, we draw these circles. We draw these circles that show that the electrons are shared between two of them. You don't need to draw all the electrons on the inside. When drawing these circles, I always recommend only drawing the outside circle because it's only valence electrons. Only the electrons on the outside that really take part in bonding. Alright guys, that's it for our chemistry part of our study guide. Look at that. You guys are flying through it. I will see you guys in the next review video. Bye everybody.